Hi, my name is Kaylin Lample, and this is my final presentation for MedU 762. I teach at Wimber Elementary School, where I am a fourth grade ELA teacher, and I'm in my third year of teaching. I teach two rotations of students this year. Both of my rotations have approximately 20 students. The one class is a little bit smaller due to a few students being pulled out to be instructed by our learning support teacher. Both of my classrooms have a variety of students. One of them, I have a student who is hard of hearing. I do have a hearing support teacher that comes in 3 days a week to give her one-on-one support. I also have many students with emotional support needs. I have some students diagnosed with ADHD. Another one of my students also gets autistic support sessions 3 times a week. I now am going to go into a few of the articles that I have looked at throughout the semester in this class. In week 4, I specifically looked at the jigsaw activity. So I actually got to implement the jigsaw a few weeks after submitting this assignment in my Unit 2, where we talked about different groups within the Middle Ages. So each group got a different category. And so it was really helpful to see how engaged the students were and how they were able to become masters in one topic and be able to explain that category to all of their other classmates. I do think it's something that you should incorporate into your own classrooms because students are really engaged, and it's the most I saw them going back into their book to find information because they knew that they were going to be responsible for teaching other students. Some of my recommendations, though, are to try to start at the beginning of the year. I struggled because my students didn't know what my expectations were, and I didn't have a lot of time to be able to model and explain that during just that one lesson. But if I could start at the beginning of the year and kind of slowly start it with even smaller activities, I think the students would excel. And also, you have to be sure that you stay organized and give very clear expectations to students. Like I said, some limitations are time. It does take a lot of time to explain to students what you expect, and also to be able to explain and model how you want students to communicate to each other through this activity. One of my suggestions, specifically for my school, is maybe a professional development, looking at our curriculum, CKLA, and seeing how we could implement more jigsaw activities into our specific curriculum. In week 7, we looked at cognition strategies. I looked at a activity where they were trying to add in a lot of different strategies into one reading lesson. And two of the ones that I think are really helpful and I could see using in my 4th grade classroom are word webs, where you pick a word and you get to be able to look at a lot of different elements of that word and you create the word web up on the board. And I've actually have started using that within my classroom, and I think it's been very helpful. And also, while they're reading, having students respond with yes, oops, or wow to be able to keep them engaged and everyone participating in the lesson. Some limitations with this specifically is it talked about that it doesn't seem to necessarily work with students that struggle to decode text. And so I have a large amount of students that are, during our DIBELS assessments, red and yellow, which is lower, below, or well below. So I do think it's kind of a struggle within certain rotations to be able to use effectively. And just some suggestions for me for future research is to maybe have more of a variety, looking at some of those low decoders and seeing if there's a way to implement it that will strengthen their understanding as well. In week 10, I looking at how to make students more concise writers. And my recommendations, if you are going to implement that strategy, which I think is really helpful, is to try to do it within small groups, or also allowing other content teachers to teach it, like in the science and social studies blocks, because it is a very long strategy. They recommend using it up to an hour, and I know during my ELA time, I do not have an hour to be able to devote to just writing. And I also would suggest having more research in specifically fourth grade and the elementary level. The one I read was from K to high school, and I don't think it was necessarily a big focus on elementary level students. In week 4, I looked at the use of implementing podcasts to have students be more engaged readers. And I do think that's a great idea. I know podcasts may not be the best for my classroom, but I think it would be really interesting to start incorporating some sort of web or media into the classroom to engage students to be better readers. Some of my limitations is that trying to have all kids on a podcast would be extremely loud. 20 kids recording, I just don't see feasible in my room. And also the necessity to have the appropriate technology is not something every school possesses. My suggestion is, in research, trying to implement this into a large group setting. The one I read, that it had a classroom of around 5 students. So it would be interesting to see if it would have the same results in a classroom of about 20 students. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed my presentation.